Shopify has been one of those really dynamic, rapidly growing stocks. I first got in 2018 for $143, and now it's past $1,000. We're seeing a lot of kind of drama this year, but on the year as a whole, it's up over 200%. Is there still time to get into Shopify before we get some more big gains? Welcome back to the channel family. My name is Trey, getting in touch with you from Japan, and on this channel we talk about stocks and investing. On our secondary channel we talk a lot about entrepreneurship and actually how Shopify has played a part in our business growing over the years as well. For those of you who've been following our channel for a while now, you know that I'm an entrepreneur and I freaking love starting new businesses, and therefore I freaking love Shopify. I've actually been using Shopify for years. I've started numerous stores for myself and for clients, and I think because I enjoy it and I've had success with it, it makes it easy for me to be biased about this stock. I mentioned that I started grabbing shares in 2018. I'm still in the habit of getting shares, and I think Shopify has a really bright future. Interestingly, regarding our own experience with Shopify in a proper growing, multiplying business, we started back in about 2015 and it grew really, really well. It's actually a rental business, which Shopify isn't really made for, but we were able to use different plugins to kind of make it work for the first year or two before we built a custom solution, allowing us to manage all of our rentals going around Japan and stuff like that. So if you want to learn more about entrepreneurship or, our story or about Japan in general, click on our second channel up here. But yeah, in this video, we're going to be taking a look at Shopify, where they've come from and where they're going. Not unlike myself, Shopify is made in Canada. They've grown to be a $134 billion market cap, which seems to change dramatically every day, actually. Current stock price is around like $1,000 or $1,100, depending on what hour you're looking at it. And we've seen explosive growth, not only in the stock price, but also in a bunch of the revenue and profit figures as well. They've largely just shrugged off the effects of the pandemic, unlike many other companies. They've been riding the coattails of the boom in entrepreneurship in North America, along with e-commerce growth, especially aided by the pandemic. So you might be wondering what differentiates Shopify from other website builders like Wix or Squarespace or things like that. And one of the really interesting things, like I mentioned a second ago, for our business, we weren't just selling stuff, we were renting stuff. And so we needed to have the capability to manage our inventory, see when it was leaving, when it would be coming back, including all of the shipping times and stuff like that, and then to be able to automatically make them available a few days after they would come back to us. And so any other normal e-commerce platform doesn't help you manage any of that. But Shopify has a really neat kind of app store, like you would have for your smartphone, where I think they have around 5,300 apps right now that you can plug in. They help you with marketing, they help you with inventory management, they help you with even just the style of your store. Also things like fraud protection, shipping, discounting, and more recently, they're starting to make more partners with companies like Walmart, where you can actually sell from your Shopify store through Walmart's website, dude. And I think these are the kinds of advances that really separate Shopify from a lot of their competition. And one of the interesting things for us as owners of Shopify, if you own stocks, you own the company, is that these apps kind of create this really interesting cycle where it's like the more apps are available, the more stores can sell better on the platform. And the more stores are selling better, the more people want to start making their stores on the website. And therefore, the more apps become available. And Shopify is taking a little bit of commission the whole way around. And so for us, that's really exciting. Shopify recently released their third quarter earnings results and a very thorough and graphically pleasurable report. So I wanted to share some of those numbers with you. So first we'll start out with strong, consistent revenue growth. Check it out here. You see those bars going almost parabolic with super beefy growth between 2018 and 2019, along with, the year over year on the right side, third quarter 2019, 2020. It's 96% growth in revenues year over year. And they have this broken down into merchant solutions as well as subscription solutions. I think subscription solutions are made up of the apps that I was mentioning earlier, as well as renewals, themes, domains, and Shopify's other services. And then I think subscription solutions are what they're paying to Shopify to have a store on the site. Besides making money just on the apps, every time somebody buys something through a Shopify store, Shopify Payments also keeps a percentage of that sale. And we're also seeing them working on fulfillment systems. You may be familiar with FBA, Fulfillment by Amazon, which is basically like if I'm a shop on Amazon, I send a bunch of my stock to Amazon's fulfillment center, and if people are making orders in that vicinity or in that area, it doesn't even have to be that close, Amazon will automatically send those out for me. And so as a small shop, I don't have to deal with the shipping. And also my customers will get their product quicker if they're far away from me. And so Shopify is also starting to set up these regional kind of fulfillment centers, making it much easier and quicker for Shopify stores to be selling more. And they're also starting to look into B2B, business to business sales as well. Now, since I've had my eyes on Shopify for a few years now, I knew they were growing well, but I didn't really know they were growing this well until I saw this metric. Check out this chart. They've taken second place in share of US retail e-commerce sales in 2019. This is 2019. It's probably even better in 2020. It'll be hard to tell. Although I bet Walmart's probably jumped up since they launched Walmart Plus this year. This shows Amazon obviously in first place with 37%, the lion's share of the market. But Shopify's in second, above eBay, above Walmart. That's crazy to me. Also, as you scan down the chart, it's also good to notice that their competitors like WooCommerce, Wix, or Squarespace are nowhere on here. Continuing on with the third quarter 2020 presentation, they showed a record number of merchants became paid subscribers in the third quarter following their 90-day free trial. And so this chart here is showing how much they're making from subscriptions from shops that are operating inside Shopify. So this MRR is monthly recurring revenue, which stores pay every month to Shopify to just have a store on Shopify's platform. So we're seeing big time growth here, and it just keeps going up and up and up. And they say it's a 47% compound annual growth rate. One of the tricky things when you're looking at stock prices, I mean, especially this year, because the stock market has become so disconnected in some ways from a lot of the economic indicators we traditionally would look at. A lot of people look at Shopify and they're like, $1,100? I don't even really know what Shopify is. That's stupid, or that's insane, or that's ridiculous. But Shopify's been around for a few years now, and they're still growing at a 47% compound annual growth rate. But with all of these new services, especially ones like Fulfillment by Shopify, and I'm gonna get into their Walmart partnership a little bit more here in a minute, with these things on the horizon, we're seeing actually that kind of feedback loop is just making it stronger and stronger and stronger. And I really wouldn't be surprised in the coming years if that gap between Amazon and Shopify starts to narrow a lot more. Maybe putting us in a place where we see a lot more stock price appreciation. You know, the price earnings, the price to sales is bonkers. But with this amount of growth, maybe it's not that kooky. Let's keep going into the charts. This is a breakdown of the subscription portion of what I was showing earlier, split into various revenue streams. So we have here in the pink, apps, themes, domains, Shopify Plus, platform fee revenue. And then in the green, monthly recurring revenue. And then for Shopify Plus. And then in the dark green, monthly recurring revenue core. So core is just kind of the basic ones, whereas Shopify Plus is people paying over $2,000 a month for Shopify's like really premium service. And we just see those numbers going up and up and up, especially the core number. We also see GMVs, or gross merchandise values, increasing just as steadily over the years too. They say merchants are scaling and succeeding on Shopify. So on the right side there, comparing third quarter of this year to last year, it's up 109% for GMV, gross merchandise value. And again, this gets into that feedback loop where other people are like, hey, I'm thinking about starting a shop. Obviously, I should do it on Shopify because they provide the most tools. They provide the best service, the best experience, so you get more users, so you get more app makers, so you get Shopify providing more services because they're making more money, and therefore you get more users, and it's just this cycle that just keeps getting bigger and more powerful. Interestingly, as far as expenses go, unlike a lot of growing companies, we're seeing a decrease in sales and marketing spend over the years as they grow, highlighted here in the dark green. I usually like to see research and development and sales and marketing growing over the years, but it seems Shopify is doing just fine without that. Word of mouth is probably carrying them now because of that virtuous cycle. I also wanted to share about some of the highlights from HyperCharts. HyperCharts is a really kind of handy service, especially for those who are visually oriented, trying to figure out how to value companies or evaluate stocks. If you find these little videos helpful for you, please click on the link down below. If you end up signing up and then becoming a paid member, that supports us here at the channel as well. First of all, check it out, more parabolic charts for you, starting at revenue and operating income. We have here in the blue revenue, yellow gross profit, and then red operating income, which is really the key actually. But look at the revenues just growing, 500 million, a little bit down in the second quarter for obvious reasons, and then up to 700 million, and then up to 767 million. And we see that red operating income finally ticking significantly up into the positive. Last quarter it was almost zero. This quarter up to 50 million in profits. Next we have the margins. Gross margins up top, and the two lines down below on the bottom are operating margin and profit margin. Again, same story as in the last slide. We're taking a look at the profit margin particularly. 0.5%, minus 6%, up to 5%, and then boom, up to 24.89%. It seems despite the pandemic, we're just starting to see things like, you hear about all these companies who are pouring all this money into marketing and research and development and all this stuff, and there's something lurking under the surface. We're just starting to see Shopify peeking out into profit. We're just starting to see kind of what they're really made of. Next, we have revenue growth in blue and operating expenses in red. This kind of just is a different way of looking at some of the figures we were looking at earlier. Operating expenses slowly fading down, and finally in the very last quarter here on the right, dipping back down to this kind of 39-ish%. And on the converse, revenues year over year skyrocketing, especially during the second quarter. We're seeing them growing in revenue by like almost 100%. And our final hyperchart is the cash holdings, which we like to see growing, especially in rocky times like this. You never know really what's on the horizon, but one of the really shocking things about Shopify is, check this out. Even in the second quarter to the third quarter, it like doubled. And then into the third quarter, it almost doubled again. We're at more than $3 billion in cash and cash equivalents. That's like offensively large amounts of cash on hand. And that's what you really like to see in a growing company. And that also underscores what I was just saying. You know something's growing under the surface and it's just starting to pop out and reveal itself. And you're like, whoa, Shopify is super solid. And so we're seeing that not only are they growing well, but management kind of has a really good grasp on how to keep debt low. And I think their conservative kind of management of their finances has contributed to this growth. And going forward, I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see them make use of this cash to make acquisitions or to make really big partnerships like the one with Walmart we're going to talk about here in a minute. We've also found that Shopify has more than 1 million merchants on its platform and more than 5,000 Shopify Plus customers, which, like I mentioned earlier, are the ones paying $2,000 a month or more recurring. We don't know anything about churn information, but as far as I know, people who get onto Shopify, once they start selling, they're usually pretty satisfied. Here are a couple illustrations to give us an idea of where things are going into the future. They have building for the long term. Check it out, especially here on the right with the ambition portion. Shopify Fulfillment Network, which I mentioned, wholesale and business to business. In the expansion there in the middle, they also have retail POS, which is kind of dipping into where Square got started. POS means point of sale, which is basically like a cash register or a tool you can use to swipe or things like that. It'd be really neat to see Shopify going backwards, so to speak, from e-commerce into brick and mortar. And if they're able to execute on this point of sale stuff well, and they have the funding to do it with their $3 billion cash balance, if they can execute on that well, it could end up being actually really a big threat for that portion of Square's business. If you're interested in learning more about Square, check out my latest video up here. I don't think Square's necessarily too dependent on their POS now, as they've largely transitioned into the Cash app, but it could be cool to see Shopify, after kind of really getting a good hold on not only brick and mortar, but also e-commerce, merchants and stuff like that, starting to flip to the other side of the coin and start to provide more services for shoppers who are shopping at these merchants, kind of like what Square did. At the very end of this report, they also kind of showed what I mentioned earlier in the video, this kind of cycle. They call it the Shopify flywheel, where you get more merchants and therefore you get more channels, partners, and capabilities, and therefore you get more sales or gross merchandise values, and then you get more merchants, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. If you're unfamiliar with what a flywheel is, basically it's a part in the clutch of a car where once it gets spinning, because it's heavy, it starts to get more and more and more momentum. And then when you hit the clutch in, it lets it go and then it slows down kind of thing. But I think that's just an analogy that they use to kind of give you this idea of like, once it gets going faster and faster and faster, it's harder to stop it. They also mentioned at the end of the report that they are testing a few other services, some other things on the horizon here. Number one, Shop Pay Installments, which is like a buy now, pay later type thing. This gives merchants more flexibility with offering financing for their shoppers. And once again, I'm sure not only will the merchants make more money because of options like this, but Shopify will also be able to charge some interest, giving them another stream of revenue. They also mentioned that Shopify Payments is now available in 17 countries, including here in Japan. We do use it here in Japan as well. And finally, another way for Shopify to make even more money, they mentioned Shopify Capital, which is basically like, hey, we see that your shop maybe could use a loan right now. Do you want to take a loan from us? And obviously, like a bank, when you make loans, you get a return on interest for that. The amount that they've been loaning is up 79% year over year in this last quarter. So seeing all these different little ways that Shopify can make money off of successful merchants is just like so exciting. And so the final bit of exciting news I wanted to share is their new partnership with Walmart. Check it out. They show Shopify becomes Walmart's first ever commerce platform partner, helping businesses reach shoppers and grow sales. So they go on to say that inventory and order management from within Shopify, bulk editing, no additional monthly fees. And so for the first time ever, rather than only being able to sell to the people that you've got to your site through SEO, you can access the like hundreds of bajillions of people who are already going to Walmart's site, and they'll be able to find your products on there. And it doesn't cost you anything extra. So all of a sudden, the number of people who might be seeing your products is like instantly like way, way, way bigger. And actually, SEO might become a smaller part of the equation, which could be good to see for small businesses as well. So what do you think? Are you interested in Shopify? Do you already own Shopify? Let me know down in the comments section. You know that I have owned it since it was about 143 bucks. I've been in and out, regrettably. I wish I bought more back then. As you know, I'm a big fan of Shopify. I like the services, and I can see how all these different little ways that they're getting money while also providing super good value for their merchants and therefore really good value to the customers. We're seeing a lot of satisfaction and a lot of needs being met. And so I think if you're looking forward into the next 5-10 years, I would frankly be shocked if Shopify's stock price stayed exactly where it was now. I think it's a little bit frothy. It's a little bit too hot right now, like just about every stock in the stock market is. But you know, I think the traditional way of evaluating stocks by looking at the PE ratio and the price to sales ratio and debt to equity ratio and all these different things is starting to shift rapidly, not only under the huge, really rapid transition to a lot more e-commerce, but also with the huge influx of young, inexperienced traders who are really quick to get in and out of stocks and stuff like that. I think we're also seeing an interesting shift with the way a lot of big funds and stuff are moving as a result of all these different dynamics. And so on the whole, I'm going to be buying slowly into Shopify over the years. I'm going to continue to do that. And so as a result of that, I'm not too concerned if it fluctuates 100 bucks a day or 50 bucks a day or things like that, you know. And obviously it's an expensive stock, but again, I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see this growth, this emerging out of the ocean, just kind of like whoosh, taking off, you know. And it could legit, I know a lot of people throw this phrase around, but it could legit actually become like the competition to Amazon that people actually like. Like, I know a lot of people are like, as a customer, I love Amazon, but as a merchant, I like despise it. And Amazon's been doing a lot of stuff where they're like, hey, you have a really great product. We're gonna copy it and sell it for half price. Peace out, sucker. And so Shopify wouldn't do that and can't do that. And that's actually like the opposite way of doing things from Amazon. So in North America, as they're growing, I think we're gonna start to see more and more kind of fervor for Shopify and more support for Shopify's way of doing things. And I'm really interested to see how they go growing internationally. And yeah, so I'm just gonna keep going with them. Let me know what you're gonna be doing with the stock. In the next video, I think I'm gonna talk about Airbnb's IPO. I have a lot of thoughts about Airbnb. I love Airbnb. I used to be a host on Airbnb here in Japan. And I'm gonna watch how that IPO goes and then release a video for you guys. Also, if you're looking to start a brokerage or you just want a bunch of free stocks, feel free to click on our Webull link down below. If you sign up and put in $100 into your account, you can get 4 stocks valued up to $3,700, and that also helps support us here at the channel too. Thank you guys very much for your time and for watching all the way to the end. Looking forward to hearing your comments down below. Love you guys and have a great week.